Alright, so we're going to work on shapes. I'm going to create a new composition here. I'm going to call it shapes layers. Let's call it shapes. And then, as always, make sure that everything is where you want it to be. So I do 24 frames per second if I was doing a film at 1920 by 1080, or if I'm doing UHD. Let's do UHD. It's not going to take much. And here we have, since a lot of people are shooting 4K these days, a little 4K sequence, make sure our frame rates match, all that kind of stuff. Background color. Okay. So in order to create shapes, remember there's shapes up here, and all these shapes can be altered. How many points are on the shape, things like that. So this is our main area of creating shapes up here. I can say layer, new shape layer from this point, and create a layer, and then choose, say, a rectangle, and then I have a shapes layer. And then if I open up my shapes layer, by the way, I'm going to go a little quicker this time, and you guys can pause and rewind a little bit. I just want to rip through this. Gives you all sorts of different options. So size, position, roundness. Oh, there. Okay, so we can round it. So there's different things we can do in all the different ones. You can have a stroke, fill, all those sorts of things. And of course, we're going to look at this one a lot, is the add button. What can I add to this in terms of, different kinds of animation that I can do on this. And this is, hey, look at that. So what, kapow, like Batman. What I want you to get out of this is like just a little playground over here. And for professionals, you can download like something off the internet that's a template or something like that, and apply a template to everything and just whip through stuff. But your stuff's just going to look like everything else. And you see this a lot if anyone watches YouTube videos. As people download Final Cut templates or Premiere templates or After Effects templates, and all the graphics kind of look the same. But when you start to do your own work, you can start creating what we used to call cocktails, which is saying like add one thing to add to another thing to add to another thing until you get something that's totally unique to what it is that you're trying to do. And that way no one else can, oh, you're getting very sleepy. No one else can have a look that's quite like your look. So all these things are, customizable, and that makes you a very important asset into a production, because not everyone wants everything to look like it's cookie cutter. It's right out of the box. So here, again, if I hold down Shift, I can do that. Another one. Now notice I didn't hit Layer, New Shape Layer. I would just, and let me use my selection tool. I just clicked and dragged, which is another way you can make a shape layer. The only problem with that is, and this is where you get into trouble, you say, oh, I'm going to make another shape layer, and I'm going to use the ellipse tool, and then you'll see what's happened here. Since I was already on a shape layer, it's just created an ellipse inside of here, which is great, which means you can create custom shapes out of all different kinds of shapes. So here you can have multiple shapes inside a shape layer, which means you can create one shape layer that works as a singular thing. But in order to create a second shape layer, the way I just did it, which is just clicking on the ellipse tool, I'd have to click off of this shape layer, and now if I do it, it creates a brand new shape layer. So now we have two layers instead of one. So then instead of this being inside of here, it's its own thing. And now I can start to see, well, what can I do in an ellipse here? What are the different elements that I can change? And as I've said before, and I'll say it again, everything has a stopwatch. So anything that you can do here, I'll turn on a stopwatch for all this on the first frames here. I'll go down a little bit, and then I'll just change everything. So opacity will be 67. Stroke width will be half of what it is. Color is now going to be yellow. And now everything's going to animate over that time. So the stopwatch is again on everything. So you want to pay attention to that. And there's all sorts of different elements in all of the different shapes. So here we have taper. We didn't have taper on the other one, but we have it now. Oh, that's neat. Can I animate it? Yes, you can. It's got a stopwatch. Start, erase, all this kind of stuff. And I'm not going to go through each one of these. This is for you to play. This is a playground. And you're to play in here and say, you know, what is it that I could make that's unique to the thing that I'm doing? And not everything that you want is going to be shapes. But certainly for designs and things, you know, this is a good place to start. And you could look at opening sequences that use shapes. We're also going to look at opening sequences that use like projections and live action footage or stills and things like that. But for now, you know, shapes are a great way to create a little pizzazz. But they don't have to be, you know, kitty or colorful things like that. They can be all sorts of different ways that you're going to use shapes. So another way we can create shapes is using the pen tool. And the pen tool we'll use in rotoscoping, other things, but here you can create custom shapes by clicking and dragging, and if I finish this, it becomes a full-on shape. And now I can edit this as well to change the way I want it to look. And now this shape is a custom shape, so I've created my own custom shape, which means if you had something like a building or something and you wanted to mask, create a shaped version of it, you could basically do an outline, something like that. So in here we got my shape layer, and what can I do with my shape? Well, you can do everything that we were just talking about. I can open this up, take a look. I've got a path that I can work on, which means, well, what does that mean? So if I hit animate on the first frame here, remember you always have to start an animation. If you don't, it's not going to work. And if I wanted to, I could take that point, and notice it's trying to grab the whole thing. I can hit shift, unlock them, and then I can alter this. And you're like, well, that's kind of neat. What's going on here? By the way, over here you can see that the color of this line is too much like that blue. So I could either change the blue, but there's a little thing down here that allows you to change the actual color of that line. So if you click on this color down here, say orange, will show, and that way I can see the line better, and then I can work better. So somebody's pointing their finger at someone or something, I guess. Let's go Blue Jays. And then it's just gonna over that. So I'm just basically animating the path. I don't want to animate the path. You say I want it to bubble around the edges, or I want it to do something. This is where, again, the playground starts. And you're like, okay, well, what happens if I, and that's how you should start it. What happens if I wiggle the paths? And then I say, okay, let's wiggle the path. And then I just start dragging stuff and say, oh, okay, that's what that's going to do. So this will start wiggling that detail of it. Oh, so if I wanted it to go over time, I can just hit detail 20, set a stopwatch, and then say, okay, well, let's make it 80. And now it's going to do this. Oh, fun. By the way, I've never played with this particular one, so there, now I know. But you say, yeah, I want something that's electric or whatever. You can just play around with it and move your keyframes around as we did on the other things. And the other one I wanted to show you was, playback's starting to get a little choppier. We are doing 4K, by the way. And you will find with After Effects, once you start adding layers upon layers or effects upon effects, it's going to slow down. It's just the nature of the beast. So the other thing I'll show you on here is just a regular old path. So if I wanted to draw a path of just a line, but say I don't want the fill this time. I don't want that red. I just want a line. I can just click on the word fill, not on the color, but on the word fill. fill options comes up, and then I can just say no center. I don't want anything in the fill options. And you know something, I don't like the color of this line, so I'm going to change it to red. Hit OK, and I'm going to say it's too thick, so I'm just going to say this line is going to be now 20. But you can see also here there's an add. Oh, what can I add to this now? Well, let's try adding one called trim paths. What does that do? Well, if I trim a path, it's down here now, and open that up, start and end. So we looked at this before, and if I say, okay, I'm just going to start a stopwatch on end, go to the end, and then put it to 0. So I'm going to go from 100 to 0, and whoa, look at that. Like, that looks really neat, but it's going the wrong way, Mark. It's going the wrong way. Well, there is another button here. So your path is going, shows you which way it's going. So I can say, go the other way. What I want you to get out of this is that it's got a whole bunch of different options that you can play around with, and the best way you can say is just like, well, how do I, or what does this do and what does that do? I think we looked at what is zigzag? I've never used zigzag. I'm assuming it zigs and zags, and I just drag this around. Oh yeah, okay, that's cool. It's like a Charlie Brown t-shirt. Smooth corners. Okay, that's what that does. This is what that does. Okay, well, I'm going to add this to my animation. So all the different ways that you can play around with shape layers. And the last one I want to show you here is the text layer that can become a shape layer. So if I just call this shapes, and right now, if I go over to my character here, see that's not, it hasn't shown up here the fill and the outline. So it's actually in the character element in one of the panels down here. If you don't have this, all these panels can be gotten from up here. So you can say, okay, I want the mask interpolation or lumetri scopes if you guys are into Premiere stuff, content aware fill, brushes, all of these things. So these aren't turned on. If I turn them on, like say align, it's going to show up over here. And now the reason why I just did that is because I have my caps lock on. It says caps lock, so it's not refreshing. The good thing about caps lock is if you got something that's really complicated and you don't want it to refresh because it's taking too long to refresh something, you just hit caps lock like this. If I just hit caps lock, it won't refresh. But I can move this around freely and it's not taking any computer power. I'm going to say, I'm just going to put this down here and then turn it off, and there it is. Alright, so shapes. So now these are not shapes. This is text right now. So just so you know. So there is stuff you could do in text. You can see again there's an animation. So all the different things that you can animate are all here as well. But as well, you can go into shapes, click on it, and if you go up to layer, create shapes from text, now these have been turned into shapes, which means if I wanted to edit this text, I'd have to make sure I edit on the text layer here. But even then, let's just see. So I've just typed in sharps. It didn't change the layer above it. So so this text layer, even though I'm editing it, it doesn't reflect in now the shapes that are above it. So this is actually turned off. You can see with the eyeball, and it created a shapes layer. But if I were to turn this back on, you'll see that I actually rewrote it as sharps, which means you can't edit this once you've created it as outlines. So you'd have to start over again. So you can't go, oh, you know, I spelt it wrong, and you're halfway through your animation. Well, looks like you're starting over again. Because this, I can't. If I double click on it, I can't change the text now. It's not text anymore, it's a shape. But it gives me all additional controls. I can control this by individual letters, so I can animate just one letter. So I can click on the S and say, oh, you know, what I'm going to do here. Hold on one second. I'm going to go to shapes. I'm going to, for them all, on the contents, I'm going to add stroke. And in this stroke, I'm just going to increase this. And I'll change it from white to something we can actually see. Or say red. And say, so 5 pixels. So I can animate this S or all of these together. So if I click on contents and hit add, I can animate all these things that we were just doing together as one thing. So I've just selected that, the twist, and now with the twist I can twist the entire thing. Whoa, whoa, good fun. It's a hula party. But I can also do that just for each individual one as well. So this is where you say, oh man, this is like, this is, I keep saying to you, you know, you can go so far in After Effects. Once you learn the basics of like those little stopwatches of how to start and stop stuff, you can infinitely go into it and change things. And it's simple. It's simple, but the more you do to it, the more it's simple, but the more you add to it, the more customized it becomes, or the more it becomes what you want it to be. So here, if I said, let's use that trim paths again. Trim paths is like writing things on, basically. You're trimming the path. And if I just click and drag, you'll see that it shows me what the animation is going to look like. Oh, cool. So then I can just do each individual one, and you can say, yeah, I can click a stopwatch here, start at 0, or sorry, let's start at 100. Right, now I'm going to go to the end, and I can either click and drag or hit my end key, and I'll go back to 0, and now it's going to write that on for me. And you're like, wow, I want that to do to every one of them, but am I going to do that every time? And you're like, yeah, but you can copy and paste. That's the fun thing about everything in computer lands. You can say copy something. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy this, Command C. And let's see if I paste this into H, what'll happen. There we go. Trim path shows up, and hey, they start working together. And now if I open this up and I say, oh, trim paths is here, here's my keyframe. Well, I don't have to keep my keyframe where it is. I can just move it. I'm going to say, well, I want it to start a little bit after. I want them to end in the same place, but I want this one to start after the S. There we go. Now it's going to start. And the reason why it's kind of bumping a little bit is because it's 4K. If I was doing this at 1920 by 1080, it would just pile through this. And again, this is a very fast computer, so the fact that it, you know, just even has a hiccup on a shape will show you, you know, that you have to be patient with this program. I think when I move this over, though, I move the other keyframe over. Notice the end keyframe isn't there anymore. I think I move that over. That's why it's not finishing the shape. There it is. It's over here. So say I wanted to end earlier and start later. All these can be moved around. There we go. And now if I click and drag and lasso basically both of these, I can say let's ease them in. So we can go keyframe assistant, easy ease, and now it's gonna slowly start, zoom through, and slowly end. Slowly being slow down or speed up. Not, I would call that slow. And I could do the same for this one up here as well. I'm just clicking on the word and it will select all the keyframes and ease them. And I can do this for all of the different shapes that I have. So these are shapes layers. You can play around with them. Again, there will be, if you look on the tutorial, you can see that there are a bunch of timecode places. Again, if you look on the again, if you look at the time codes on the YouTube video, you can skip to the various ones or skip back to ones that you wanted to look at again. But this is just to show you, how to start with shapes, continue working with keyframes, and just increase your creativity. So all of these things can have real-world uses and implications, different ways you can use them. I'll show you a goofy way that I used it once. This is from a show called Celebrity Deathmatch. And this was it's the two celebrities put together in a ring to fight it out, and they just was team celebrities up. So this was Jake Gyllenhaal and Tobey Maguire, and it was a whole Spider-Man themed thing, and why Tobey Maguire at the time was more popular than Jake Gyllenhaal, who people thought. My mom thought my mom thought Tobey Maguire and Jake Gyllenhaal were the same people. But here, he's his character is taking out a piece of gum, and this was stop motion animation, and we didn't know what to do, so I had this shot, so I'm like, okay, well, I'm just gonna start with a shape.
Jake has some sort of force field protecting him.
It's a bubble, just like from his movie Bubble Boy.
Never saw it.
Only you and 250 million other people, Johnny.
What are you laughing at, McGuire? Not even you can burst my bubble.
So, just a goofy use of a shape, and of course it was a shape, and I don't know what I did in that. Obviously, have some highlights and other things, but basically just start off with an ellipse, and it's pink bubble gum. It's partly see-through, so it has to have what are called blending modes, which are stuff like down here. Blending mode on it, so you see through the character, all that kind of stuff. So is done. It has to have a floor and a shadow, and all that is a part of it. And then all that is animated just basically using shapes and other various means. I no recollection actually how I did this, but if you asked me to do it again, I'd do it again. It would look pretty much the same, but I won't know exactly how I have done it. And see, this is where you can take a shape, and then we saw earlier in our little tutorial, make it a funky thing. And then some particle effects and stuff for some awful gas because he tooted inside his bubble, the bubble boy. So good fun, and not everything's going to be this cartoony, so you're going to use it in different methods. But shapes, you'll be surprised at how you can get away with using them in all sorts of different situations. And I've used them in all sorts of things, like commercials. I'm just going to use a shape, and someone say, "Oh, what did you do there?" I was like, "I just used a couple of shapes. I gave them texture, did whatever had to do to the shape to make it work, and off you went." No one was the wiser, but shapes are totally useful in all sorts of applications, motion design, and visual effects, things like that. So there you have it. Enjoy, and we'll see you next time.